Aloha, shalom, and Shabbat shalom. I'm here to go over tonight's Torah story, which holds a key, a code for the week ahead. Tonight's Torah story is called Metzora, and it's also, this Shabbat is known as Shabbat Hagadol, which means the big Shabbat. This is the most important Sabbath of the year. There are special Shabbats throughout the year, Shabbatot, that are sort of like the bigger, more meaningful ones. All of them hold meaning, but these are like the main keys you could think of them as, okay? So this one is really big, Shabbat Hagadol, literally. And this is a continuation of the understanding of ritual impurity and transforming those impurities into purity. This is the 28th weekly Torah portion. It's the 5th in the book of Leviticus. And oh my God, I have so many notes this year. I went so deep, and my hope is to share the key points that really touched me this year with all of you. So first of all, what I found really interesting is that if you break up the word Metzora, which is the title of the story, broken up into two words can be motzi ra, which means to speak negativity, which really much of this story is about speaking negativity. Also, this is the Shabbat that comes right before Passover. And this is why it's so important. When you see these stories as metaphorical, what does Passover represent? It represents the liberation from the darkness to the light. It represents going from the subconscious into the light of consciousness. Okay, so like I said, Metzora, motzi ra, to speak negativity. But also Pesach, which is the Hebrew word for Passover, can be broken up into Peh, P-E-H, Sach, S-A-C-H. And those words mean mouth and speak. So we see a relationship between this Shabbat that comes right before Passover and Passover itself. And when you understand these stories as codes, as actual technology to get ahead, then you can see why the Shabbat right before Passover, of course, is going to be connected. And it's going to hold a key that will best prepare us to receive the next codes to come, which are these most powerful, holy codes of Passover, of Pesach, the Exodus, liberation. So this Shabbat prepares us in a big way, Shabbat Hagadol, for those codes. And that's always what we have to do. We're always preparing for the next thing. One experience prepares us for the next. Just like when we're in one dimension, another dimension doesn't just appear. It's born of the previous dimension. We grow through our experiences. It's a spiral. Okay, so that's the first thing that I thought was really interesting, this whole concept of speaking negativity, or the mouth speaks. Okay, connection's a little. Now, even that idea of the mouth speaking is a metaphor itself. What is the mouth but the mouth of the divine? Our mouth is a representation, a microcosmic representation of the mouth of the one, of the Creator. And what we speak is actually representing our response to our life, to our environment, to the situations that we face and the people that we come in contact with. Okay, so this whole story, with that said, is painting a picture of how we must look at the ways in which we choose to respond to our reality. How are we responding negatively? And how can we shift that, seeing that as an impurity? How can we shift that to positivity and purity? Okay, so this whole story then becomes a story of examining how we can move from the path of curse to blessing, from suffering to healing, from death to immortal life. And that's what Metzora is all about. It's the Shabbat that in a huge way prepares us for this big moment that Pesach represents, which is liberation. This Shabbat contains within it the secret of redemption. Okay? I'm going to go through my notes here and share with you what I feel are the most important parts. Last week, we were addressing those impurities. We're still addressing them now. It isn't over. We're still preparing, okay? This Parsha, this portion of the Torah, talks about disease. But it's talking about spiritual disease, and really everything in our material world is a manifestation of the unseen world. This is the world of effects. The spiritual unseen world is the world of causes. So when we're talking about the sickness in this portion, it's important to remember that really all sicknesses, all illnesses are a result of an imbalance. And this is made very clear throughout the story again and again. Okay? When we're diseased, when we're sick, this story talks about how we need to be isolated from the camp, from the tribe, from the rest of the people. Now, your first thought might be, well, isolation is dangerous. We need to have unity. But remember that separation has its purpose as well. We're so quick to judge separation, yet it's ever present. And when we redefine separation in its divine purpose, we can actually uncover something incredibly magical. We need to separate, to come back together, to unify, even more whole, more powerful than we were before the separation. Separation has its purpose, just like the whole story of Genesis and the Garden of Eden. We fall to rise again. Otherwise, we wouldn't need this earth school. We wouldn't need this experience. Everything's already perfect in an alternate. There we go again. Sorry, you guys, the connection's pretty poor, okay? So we're here to learn and to grow. So separation has its purpose, okay? So with that said, the story talks about illness and how we must separate from the tribe. And at first you think, oh, well, that's because of the contagion. And that's not true. When you look deeper at the spiritual understanding of this, you see that isolation is necessary, okay? And this story tells us why. The Devar Torah, or the deeper layers, the Kabbalistic understanding tells us why. When we're ill, we need to separate ourselves from the rest of the world, the noise of the world, so that we can get back in touch. Okay, you guys, I'm really struggling with this connection. Thank you for bearing with me. You may see new scenery every time the connection reactivates. So it's kind of fun, okay? So this whole story is teaching us, remember, the very first thing we discussed is about negative speech, and the mouth speaks. So it's saying that our expressions, our negativity, our responses that are negative are what bring about that negative karma in the form of imbalance, illness, suffering, disease. So when we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, what happens is we have nothing left to judge. We have nothing left to respond to negatively. So it gives us that separation that we need, that space that we need to eliminate the distractions, eliminate what we believe to be outside of us, and have nothing left to look at but ourselves. So isolation actually is very important. Until you can get that key that you need. Go within to get that key that you need to promote that healing so that you can return back to society, right? From solitude to society. So that you can be whole again. So that you can join the whole in a way that's going to contribute in a positive way. We want to be positive contributions to the world, right? All of us do. So isolation has its place. You don't want to stay there forever, but it's all about balance, right? Life is a balance between effort and surrender, going within and sharing that with the world. So this whole story is about understanding how our negative karma that comes back at us in the form of disease and suffering is a result of our negative responses to the world. And we must isolate ourselves then so that we can stop looking outside for the answer and judging what's around us, incurring more disease, more karmic points. And look within to ourselves. If we want to be a master judge, well, then why not turn that inward to analyze, where am I imbalanced? Where have my responses in thought, speech, and action, where have they been negative? How can I shift that? Okay, so this is very much also connected to Arcanum 9. The hermit in the tarot, aka the sage. It's that archetype in us of the sage where we understand we need to come outside of the noise of the world, which is also going inside of ourselves, so that we can see the bigger picture and come back to the truth. Okay? Isolation curbs egotism. Okay? And egotism is the cause of the punishment which is disease. And we're going to talk about that, looking at disease as punishment. But first, I want to continue with this part of the notes. When we're alone, we realize the value of others and we accept them rather than resent their imperfections. So that's the beauty of isolation too. When we're alone, not only are those people not right in front of us, so we don't have anything to judge, we begin to miss them. That separation, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? You've heard this. And so we begin to miss those people, and then it's easier for us to see their light. And then we can begin to allow that shame or that guilt to surface that we were holding deep inside. And we can say, wow, I have been looking at this person with negativity. I have been judging this person. And really all I want now is to be in their presence, because now that I'm isolated, I see that I've been a fool for, picking on all of the imperfections of everyone but myself. And they are yourself. So really you're only picking on yourself, which has led you to that point of suffering, of illness, of imbalance, of isolation. So the darkness makes us appreciate the light, right? Because that's a key part of this story. And then also in that isolation, we realize what we need to do to get back to that whole. We start to accept our shortcomings and our own imperfections and make the commitment or, have the resolve to be able to then go back to the whole and be a better person, be a better contribution to that whole, like we said. Okay, this is the part where it gets extra deep. It's understood that death is the greatest purity in the Torah, okay, in studies of the Torah. Why? Because death is really an illusion. We need to see beyond the illusion to immortal life. Death is just a stage on the way to rebirth, resurrection, eternal life. So when you're going through the story of Metzora and you're addressing the sickness, the disease, the deeper layer there to get to is understanding that beyond the disease is death. But it's representing the same thing. It's impurity. So the Torah actually, one of the main commandments is to accompany the dead. But what it's doing there is it's not telling you to honor death or even accept the death, which is an illusion. It's commanding us to accompany the dead, which is the being, and honoring the light within, honoring the essence and the life of that being. So while it is a commandment, one of the most important in the Torah, to accompany the dead, we don't acknowledge the actual death part. That's not real. It's an illusion. And this is a big key here for New Age society, is that we actually obsess over death. And we think we're doing a good thing by honoring death, but really we should be going straight through that to honoring the rebirth. Because that really is what the death is a rebirth. And so in the Jewish culture, you learn to completely deny death. And that's a powerful message, because what we're realizing is that God is inviting us, the Creator is inviting us to go beyond our human limitations of time and space. Go beyond this understanding of our nature as finite beings. Rise above that to our timeless nature as eternal light. Know that, be that, and see that in all that you think, say, and do. Because any rituals that we do or any awareness that we give to death are simply training our brain to lean into the finite part of our being. And every moment that we lean into that finite part of our being, we're moving away from the awareness and the connection and the embodiment of our infinite nature as light, immortal. So that's really the deepest layer of Metzora, and this current Torah story is teaching us. We have to understand that we've got to transcend these human limitations. We have to transcend time and space while we're still here and apply that timeless truth to our thoughts, speech, and actions. To me, that was like the most powerful point of this whole story, okay? Going through my notes here. And I think I should just kind of read to you guys my journaling, because I don't often do that. So, death is an illusion. And it's our response to death which truly matters, just like it's our response to anything that truly matters. All that's outside of us is temporary anyway. All this material stuff is temporary. So it's our response that matters. Therefore, it's our response to death that really matters. How do we look at it? How do we define death? When we just accept death, we accept our finite nature and we stop right there. But that's only our lower temporary nature. Our true essence is light, which is eternal life. Therefore, how we treat death or how we respond to death is extremely important and revealing of our beliefs as well as our fate. Because we determine our fate, we determine our potential by our beliefs about who we really are. And when we just accept death, we accept our nature as finite and we stop our growth right there. We limit ourselves. While it's important to accompany the dead, it's not that we're honoring death in that process. We're honoring the life of the one we are accompanying. And in staying focused on that key, we promote eternal life, even as the illusion of this bodily death is taking place. If we can choose to see life, even in the face of earthly death, we acknowledge only the truth beyond the illusion. This allows us to promote immortality and to contribute to bringing heaven to earth. Because our collective goal is bringing heaven to earth, right? And what is heaven on earth? It means that we are completely embodying the light of the virtues, not moving from that space, unwavering from that virtuous frequency. And when we do that as a collective, we bring heaven to earth, right? We manifest heaven on this earth. And in that new world, new earth, in Hebrew it's called Olam Haba, or, in the New Age community, it's seen as heaven on earth, or in the New World, in Christianity, you'll hear on earth as it is in heaven. It's all the same. And in that new world, in heaven on earth, we're immortal. There is no disease, there is no decay, there's no death. We are living beyond the illusion. We're actualizing the truth of our essence as eternal light, as immortal beings, right? So really, when we practice this idea of going beyond death and only promoting light and choosing literally to not see death because it's an illusion, what we're really doing is contributing to that grand, master, divine plan of bringing heaven to earth. This is not easy for everyone to do, okay? This requires courage. It requires faith in that vision of bringing heaven to earth. If you have some part of you, and really look deep within you, if you have some part of you that says, I don't believe in that plan, or what's more, I don't even understand it, because knowledge is power. If you can't conceptualize it, you won't be able to really accept it. You have to make sense of it in your own way. And if there's a part of you that doesn't believe it can happen, then you've got to get there before you can even begin this work of moving out of the consciousness of separateness and suffering and into the consciousness of unity and immortality. You can't even begin that path until you understand and accept your part in the divine plan. And that's not easy for everyone. We're all at different parts on the path. Going through my notes. Okay, if we allow our awareness to be obsessed with death, which unconsciously we really have, especially in the New Age community, or even if we accept death as real, we hinder our ability to participate in the divine plan, and we create disconnection between ourselves and our true nature. If you want to connect to your truest self, you have to accept death as an illusion. You have to choose to only see life. Passivity regarding death is an expression which reveals our inability to willfully choose to see the rebirth beyond it. We honor death in its true definition as transformation when we honor the life within the death, okay? When we can redefine death as transformation, just like in the tarot, card 13, the death card, is also known in ancient Egypt as transformation, because that's all death is a transformation of the original one. And when we see it like that and we really carry that definition into our experience, actualizing that definition, responding to our reality from that space of awareness, it shifts everything. It shifts everything. Then we can promote transformation, rebirth, growth, and move away from suffering, death, decay, literally into the new world, right? Let's see what else here. Okay, this is interesting. Just like karma, it boomerangs, negativity boomerangs back to us. The words you speak become the house you live in. Remember, motzi ra, pesach. Speaking negativity is what this portion's all about. The words you speak become the house you live in, which can translate to, in a bigger way, can translate to your responses come back to you. That's all. Karma. The law of karma. Action and reaction. Cause and effect. It's all the same thing. Okay? And on that note, understanding the way that works, we do something, it comes back to us. When we're speaking negativity, it comes back to us, but in layers. When we have negative responses, it comes back to us, but in layers. That's the way that life works. So for example, the boomerang effect, that karma coming back to you, will first manifest farther away. Because why does it happen like that? It calls us to really use our will to see it, okay? It's like the creator or your higher self wants you to work for that. Make the most of this experience, because none of this is real anyway. It's about our efforts. It's about strengthening our will. That's what this whole life is about, in case you didn't know, right? So first, the affliction will manifest seemingly farther away from you to really see if you're paying attention, see if you're looking for it, okay? Which means, first, the disease will manifest as an imbalance within your outside environment, like your house, for example. If you pay attention, you'll see that the space that you live in really reflects your body. Even your car, you'll often find, will have problems that are reflecting your internal order or disorder. So first, you can look to your environment to see the signs of imbalance that are coming from within you. But if it doesn't get your attention and you're not paying close enough attention, the affliction will begin to manifest closer and closer to you, till it's right under your nose, and then till it's right inside of you, touching the source of where it even came from. And it gets increasingly more difficult as it moves closer to you. It becomes more and more painful, and it has greater and greater effects because you're not paying attention. And this is not a punishment. It's actually a gift. It's a gentle process that's really revealing itself in a way that sets us up to really have to assert our will, to really have to put in effort to grow. Because that's the way this life is set up. We wanted it this way. We didn't want it to be easy. That's not why we came here. So stay alert. Pay attention for where the imbalance is manifesting. Catch it, hopefully, before it becomes an illness within your own being. But even then, when it does, don't dismiss it as just a punishment. That's like a child who goes to their room because their parents said, go to your room to think about what you did. And instead of thinking about what they did, that's not what they do. And they go there and they think about how mean you are that you punished them. And that doesn't help anyone. So when you find yourself asking, why me? Why is this manifesting in my body? Notice that you're getting stuck in that victim mentality. And remember that the affliction is there because you didn't pay attention when it was over there. Now it's in here. And it's not a punishment. It's actually a gift. Because that physical ailment is at least something tangible that we can hopefully recognize and allow it to guide us to return to balance. Our imbalances, our suffering, our challenges are only there so that we can recognize them, become aware, and make a change. And you will continue to suffer so long as you see it as just a punishment. God doesn't punish. We do this to ourselves through our responses, through our words, which before our words are our thoughts, and after our words are our actions. They're all one. They're our expression. They are our response to our environment. I have so many notes. I'm just trying to pick out the key points here. So really this whole Parsha of Metzora is describing the key to resynchronization of body and soul. Resynchronization of the parts to make us whole. Preparing us in a big way for the liberation to come. Think about it, not just Passover's coming, Easter's coming, all the different holidays and rituals that are coming up are all about liberation, resurrection, rebirth. I'm sitting in the loveliest springtime weather right now, nature's reminding me from yet another angle that this is what's coming. So this story is just reminding us, hey, get in tune, prepare for what's next. Each part of the story is simply preparing us for the next. It's a cycle. So we're resynchronizing the body and soul. We're moving from solitude back to society, from sickness to healing, from imbalance to balance, from death to immortal life. And the last thing I'll share with you guys is this. We see illness as a punishment, but it is said that even the Messiah, in Hebrew it's the Mashiach, it's said that even the Mashiach has a spark of evil, because that spark is the connection to the rest of the world. The Mashiach needs to be able to connect to the rest of the world. As a bridge, that vessel needs to be able to connect above to below. So even the Mashiach has a spark of evil. Then who are we to deny that evil? Denial doesn't get us anywhere. Judgment of something as a punishment is not going to get us to that resolution. It's not going to get us back to balance, back to healing, back to whole. So see where there are impurities, as this story calls it. See where there are illnesses, sicknesses. Go beyond the judgment of it as a punishment or it being bad. Know that the pain and the suffering is only temporary anyway. So give thanks. Give it gratitude. Take the time away from the noise of the world and all the people and the names and the information, and come back to yourself. Come to a quiet space of solitude so that you can go back to the world removed of that impurity, which is really our own negativity that we think, that we speak, that we do. That isolation helps us to separate from that ego. And it gives us that space to have the desire to want to reconnect to society from a more whole place, from a more holy place, from a place that is loving and compassionate. Because when we re-enter society, we want to be a positive contribution. We want to remember not to speak badly of others. We want to value them for their light. We want to value ourselves for our light, because we know that when we think negatively or speak negatively or behave negatively, we end up sick, only to have to isolate again so that we can then return to ourselves again, so that we can then again return to society. Okay, so this is the whole idea of Parshat Metzora. You guys, I wish you a very meaningful Shabbat. I wish you an awesome preparation for Pesach, for Easter, whatever you're celebrating. But if you're not celebrating any ritual or holiday, look to nature, because all of life is celebrating. All of your cells are preparing for the next part of the cycle, because that's what life is. It's a cycle. So it's time to prepare in your own way for your rebirth, for your resurrection, for your liberation. What can you do right now in order to prepare? It means isolation, purification, and those are really the keys of Metzora. Isolation and purification. Isolate to examine the imbalances and the disease. Find the internal root of that, understanding it's connected to your own personal contribution of negativity into the world. It's about your own responses. And even if you think your responses are already good enough, how can you make them better? Because if you're still listening to this story, then I'm sure you're on the path of ever bettering yourself. I'm sure you know that the work is never done. It's every cycle, every season, every year. We're taking this to the next level. So how can you make your responses the best responses, to the best of your ability? How can you make your responses to life, to each other, in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions, be the best possible contributions to the whole. Making all of our thoughts pure, meaning making all of our thoughts compassionate, in consideration of the well-being of the whole, making all of our words positive contributions to the well-being of the whole, taking action in ways that are positive contributions for the whole. Okay? Isolate, go within, refine, examine what's going on, what have my responses been, and how are my responses showing me my deeper beliefs? How can I go deep in there to rewire those beliefs, to then express a new response to reality, to the world, to each other, that's going to reflect, instead of death, life. Instead of death, immortality. Instead of decay, disease, and suffering, healing, wholeness, bliss, joy. Okay, so remember, the deepest Kabbalistic key of this story is really accessing immortality, and each of the stories of the Torah always comes down to this root theme of moving away from death, beyond death, to immortal life. The goal of bringing heaven to earth is as a collective goal. And on an individual level, what that translates to is the goal of self-conscious immortality. It's bringing heaven to earth is bringing your soul into your body. When we do that individually, together, what effortlessly happens is heaven manifests on earth. So what does it mean to bring your soul into your body? It means to reveal the light that's already inside, remove the layers, let that light shine through every pore of your being so that it literally reverses the aging process in your cells, so that it literally produces human growth hormone, HGH. Yes, it literally happens. And you transform even your physical vessel to be a container for that light, to be an expression of that light. That is reaching self-conscious immortality, which means you are aware and you are consciously participating in the actualization of the light of immortality, which is our very essence. Okay, so that is how we prepare in all moments for what's to come next. That's the ultimate goal. But this Shabbat Hagadol is really emphasizing this process because we're moving toward Passover. We're moving toward Easter. We're moving toward rebirth, resurrection, liberation. Obviously, the steps to prepare best for that are purification and isolation, to create space so that you can go within to do the best you can possibly do. Whew. I'm with you all on this journey, and I'm so grateful to be one with you here now. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you in a short bit for the first quarter activation. Thank you.